Good morning, good morning. Good morning and welcome to Sarah Stevenson's Tuesday Morning Forum. I'm Laura McCletty, one of the facilitators, along with Mary Johnson, who stepped out for just a minute, and Jackie Edward Walton, as well as Winston Robinson, Natalie McGarrett, Steve Johnston, Thomas Moore, Elena Isley, and last but not least, Sabina Cheryl, who will lead us in a word of prayer.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Please bow your heads and let's meditate and or pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we're thankful for so much this morning. We're thankful for having observed the Buffalo Soldiers, their 1866 beginnings last week. We're happy that we witnessed, along with the Juneteenth group, a 1794 Reverend R. Allen beginning the African Episcopal Methodist Church in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We're thankful for our owners. We're thankful for our camaraderie among us as a group. And that's the Tuesday Morning Forum that Ms. Cletty just mentioned to you. We're thankful for our children. God bless them every place and everywhere, all the time. Bless our nation and its leaders. Bless our state, our county, our city, our neighborhoods, and our homes. It's in your Son Jesus' name we pray. Let us say together, Amen.
Amen. Thank you, sweetie. Do we have anyone here that's here for the first time? If you are, if you would stand and just give your name and just tell us, if you like, who you're affiliated with, and you're welcome.
Good morning. Am I the only first timer?
Oh, no, you're not.
You're not.
You're not here by yourself.
Feel better. My name is Kathleen Evans. My company affiliation is AT&T. However, I am a long-time volunteer for the Urban League, so I'm here to support the Urban League today.
Thank you.
I'm Darlene. I'm with the Urban League of Central Carolina as one of their advocacy managers.
Thank you. And welcome.
Loretta House with the Urban League front desk reception.
Good morning, my name is Franklin Muhammad. I'm Champ Franklin Speaks. I'm a motivational speaker and facilitator, and I'm here to learn about the Urban League and to see where I can get involved.
Welcome and thank you all for coming. We meet almost every Tuesday throughout the year. Take our holidays on a few other Tuesdays. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, I didn't stand up. I have been before, but it's been a really long time. It's been before COVID even that I was here in person. But I'm Grace McLean, and I'm a volunteer with Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America in North Carolina. I'm here in Charlotte, and also I'm sort of representing Democratic women in Mecklenburg County today.
Okay, thank you. Once again, thank you all for coming. We meet every Tuesday, almost every Tuesday of the year. We invite you to come back to our Tuesday Morning Forum. And what we do here is we come together and we allow individuals or organizations to come and do presentations. We're trying to just share information throughout our community. And of course, there's live streaming. We do Facebook Live, so especially for our guests. And we're waiting for the director for the Urban League. She ran into a little hiccup this morning, but she'll be here shortly. But we have April Turner, who's here, who will be representing her, and we can get started with it. But we allow speakers to come, and once they come, we have not real strict rules, but we do have order with the Tuesday Forum. What we normally do is we have the presenter present, and once they present, we have a question and answering session, and the question and answering session is facilitated by the facilitator. We recognize those that raise their hand first, and anyone can ask a question, but we ask you to ask one question at a time. And once you ask that question, we give the presenter an opportunity to answer that question. So we like to keep things orderly, as I mentioned, and just as information for those that are here for the first time, we normally don't know who will be attending the Tuesday forum. We have a basic group of people that come almost every Tuesday, but we never know who's going to come in, but they do come in respectfully, and they leave respectfully. So they may come in early and leave early, but they do it respectfully. We also do not allow debating in this session that we have. We're here until 10 o'clock. So there's no debating, one question at a time. We ask you to do it, between 30 seconds and a minute in asking your question. We know we all like to do a little commentary when we ask questions, which is it's okay, but do it within a minute. And once they start their response, we ask for no interruptions about that or going back and forth with them. If you have some concerns, you can speak with them about it afterwards, but you can also raise your hand again if you want to ask another question of our presenters. Have I covered everything, Winston?
Phones.
Oh, yes, that's right. I love this. He started this. We asked for a time of silence where you would take out your phone and silence your phone. Did I say it right? But we have had interruptions of the phone, and we don't want to interrupt our speakers once they start speaking. But we know that we've had several directors that have come here from the Urban League over the years. And we think that we have someone that's really, really special right now that's over the Urban League. And we are looking forward to hearing from her and the changes that will be made at the Urban League. She's on her way. Okay.
She says she's here, so I'm looking for her to come.
Okay.
Announcements.
Okay, now announcements, if you have any right now, you can stand up and make those announcements. But afterwards, we allow you to make announcements that will be, or send them to Steve. And we have a timekeeper too, Natalie. Will you raise your hand? That's Natalie. We ask for 1 minute for a question, and we would allow our presenter to answer. If we see we're going overtime, then we would have to allow them to answer the question.
Okay, good morning, everybody. This is Mary Johnson. I brought some vegetables from my garden, some squash and some cucumbers, so help yourself if you like some. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Okay, our guest is here. Ms. Hamilton?
Yes.
Well,
Thank you.
will you come here?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. And as I mentioned, April is the one that we've communicated with. And most of you, well, if you're from Charlotte, you know the Turners. and she's a star too. She was on a Lifetime movie.
Oh.
She was on a Lifetime movie. I had to say
A
that.
lifetime ago. Working the Urban League.
But
That's right.
without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Ms. Hamilton, who will share with us what's happening at the Urban League. And keep in mind, we're going to give her an opportunity to talk for at least 20 to 30 minutes. And afterwards, we'll give you an opportunity to ask questions. So,
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Whew. Let's see here. Good morning. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes.
I'm excited to see your faces. Hey, so who be y'all? It's been a morning. I don't know if you know it, but there's a Parkwood Avenue down by Whitewater. Yeah, there's a, not Parkwood Drive, there's a park, yeah, by Whitewater. And I was like, I don't think this doesn't look like it. But, but it's really funny how God will just be like, see, you relying on technology, you relying on, and I just was thinking about the days when you had like MapQuest, when you printed out MapQuest and how riveting that was. And before that, I was like, how did we, you went to the yellow pages or you went to the white and you just found the address, and I don't know, but technology has definitely dumbed me down a little bit, and I relied on it a little bit too much this morning. I will tell you, in all honesty, this is one of the greatest honors of my life. I I don't take it lightly to have the opportunity to come before this group and participate in an organization that I have a deep amount of respect for in terms of how it has served our community. So, I mean, you are right. April Turner is a force to be reckoned with. So she is amazing at how she connects to community and the things that she's doing there. So, well, I will get started. My name is Robyn Hamilton. I serve as the CEO and president of the Urban League. Had the opportunity to serve in an interim capacity to the organization, and I had this crazy call from a woman by the name of Rosalind Jacobs. Y'all may not know her, sitting in the back of the room, and she's like, "Listen, you're going to get a phone call. You can do this." And so now you know it's already set. You know, you're like, okay, I'm like, sure, what does this mean? She's like, this is, you can do this. So I said, okay. So they called and said, hey, listen, we'd love for you to come over to the Urban League and stand in the gap for a little while with us and, help us just sort of steady the ship while, we go through transition. I was like, sure, I'd be happy to come over and spend some time with you and get the organization. I was not staying. I was passing through. I'll just want to be here for a little while. And that was really my intention, was to just do exactly that. And when I got there, I'm positive I was not aware of the world of possibilities for this organization. And when it hit me, when I was like, no, you need to stay. You need to see what this assignment has for you, because I began to realize, I was like, this is an assignment. And that being said, we went to Washington, D.C. When I say we, the Urban League has their fly-in where they go on the Hill and they go to Washington, D.C. And we got there, and I looked at the agenda, and I was like, okay, we're going to the White House. And I was like, that's nice. I'm thinking we're going on a lovely tour. They were like, well, these are the list of people that we're meeting with. I was like, okay, so we get there, and I see some of my old DNC friends, and we get there, and I get a chance to sit down, and we're in these amazing rooms, and, I'm thinking, wow, I'm at the White House, and we're going on, and amazing people are coming in and talking with us, and the whole nine, and so I'm thinking, it's the end of the day, I'm hungry. I'm always hungry, y'all, but I'm hungry, and I get there, and all of a sudden I look up, and at the podium is standing the President of the United States in a room half this size. And I turn around and look at everybody else and be like, is the president here with us? I'm kind of like, does everybody see the same thing I see? And he's sitting down, just chit-chatting with us, and was with us for maybe about 30 minutes talking about some things, policy and things of that nature. It was at that moment I realized, I knew the Urban League was, obviously one of the longest serving, minority serving organizations, civil rights organizations, but when you have that level of access, that's a game changer. And I began to realize we maybe haven't really maximized that here in the Carolinas. So I was honored to stay and get to serve with a wonderful, passionate team over at the Urban League. So some of which are here, the folks that keep this thing on the track. That's Darlene Whitfield in the back, who make sure all of our babies have what they need, to include our students that are everything from age 18 to 80. And Miss Loretta House, who also, I told you, she's really running the Urban League. So when you get in the door, the directions start there. So I do what Miss Loretta says. So Miss Loretta's in the back of the room. And Mr. Ricky Underwood is with us as well. And this, I call it hallowed ground. And what I mean by hallowed ground, the building that we're in, that is designed by Harvey Gantt and was built by Ron Leeper. So for me, that's hallowed ground. And so I really take it to heart about that structure itself. So Mr. Ricky is the gentleman who is the keeper of that space to make sure that we keep things together all the time. So he's looking at me like, yeah, I got you. You got some stuff you got to buy for that building. I know, Mr. Rick, I'm gonna get to it. I'm gonna get to it. Of course, April Turner, who is our truth teller, our storyteller. So it's an honor to be in the room with them. So, and of course, you can't run an organization without an effective board. And so I'm really, really blessed. We've had a new board turnover. And I told these folks, I was like, y'all, this is going to be a slightly different ride than you've probably ever had before. And I didn't even know what I was really, really saying when I said those words. But for some reason, Kathleen Evans from AT&T decided she would get on this ride and hop on the board, and she's like, sure, why not, you know? So, thank you for being here today. So I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for our board who has, again, willing to take a ride that I will tell you all is going to be a little bit different than it's been in the past. So with that, I am excited to reintroduce to you the Urban League, and we call it ULCC 2.0 as we kind of move to the next level. So you go to the next slide for me, please. So a lot of times we think about the Urban League as in a community-based organization that has programs. I want to invite you to rethink that. We are an institution, and we will be conducting ourselves accordingly as we move forward, like an absolute institution. And in this institution, and the shoulders that we stand on, they have told us that we need to focus on justice and advocacy. We focus on access to health care. We focus on making sure folks get adequate education. We look at entrepreneurship. Most folks know us around housing and particularly jobs. And so a lot of folks see us as a workforce development program. But, you know, when you look back in the history of the Urban League and a lot of the civil rights organizations, I tell folks, most people associate NAACP, right, because that's what you heard about. But they were our legal defense, right? That was really the legal side of the civil rights, which at the end of the day, they were the ones fighting the policy decisions. The Urban League was instrumental in the economic development side, and that's always been their space. You know, we're about to approach, I believe it's the 60th anniversary of the walk, of the March on Washington at the end of August. So if you can get in there, that would be amazing if you wanted to participate. I said we should get a bus and just take a bus up there and, you know, participate. So that would be a lot of fun. So, but that being said, you know, 60 years, and I often tell folks, don't forget that was the March on Washington. But that march was about jobs. That march was about economic development. It was about civil rights, but it was about economic development. And that's always the space that the Urban League has stood in and been focused on as well. Can you go to the next slide for me? So with that being said, I want to take you through some of our pillars and talk with you a little bit about some of the work that we're doing. So again, we're known for the jobs programs. And we've had a great year. We have a lot of great partners in that particular space. And so we've always had, we focus on healthcare, obviously, because CNA, huge need for the nursing department. So, you know, we like to think of ourselves as ground zero. We may not have a nursing school, but we are, you know, CNAs is a big part of our programming. And so we have the opportunity of turning out some wonderful students that move into our CNAs and hopefully into a nursing career. So then we have heating, HVAC, and EPA. Now that's what most folks know us for. You know, we are the HVAC school, and we turn out some amazing people. And not only just turn out amazing people, we have an instructor that really goes beyond the book, because we feel like we have to turn our students out to be better, right? Bigger, better, faster, and we want them to be more than prepared. And so we've been really successful there. With the electrician school itself, y'all, we had 100% placement of those students into jobs before they graduated. And at the end of the day, I tell folks all the time, we could train, we're not a job training center, right? We are a job placement center. And so, you know, we could train all day long, but if we don't lead to jobs, then we have a problem. So obviously some of the construction trades, customer service, I'm gonna come back to you and talk a little bit about what we're going to do in that space. Customer service training, fiber optics IQ, which you'll be hearing a little bit more about. With all this broadband coming down, we have to have a workforce that can install this stuff, and we don't have that right now. The Appraisers Institute, I'll talk a little bit about that as well. The financial industry and commercial banking. We are realizing that, you know, you can go straight into commercial banking, not the retail side, commercial banking. And so we're thinking, how do we train folks to go into the commercial side as opposed to the retail side that you see when you walk in the door? And this one threw us for a loop, maritime. And I was like, we're not by the ocean. You know, why are we doing maritime jobs? We received the opportunity to serve as a subrecipient for the Good Jobs Challenge with the Economic Development Agency. So we are working hand in hand with them on the coast, a little bit north of, south of Hampton Roads, but north of Wilmington in that area. They do a lot of shipbuilding. And that is an industry we've been traditionally left out of. Well, it is now a national security issue because apparently China has more ships than we do. So now we're feverishly building more ships. So we have an aging workforce and a need to be able to make sure we diversify the maritime industry. So that is a huge opportunity as well as advanced manufacturing, and of course clean energy. Y'all are hearing a lot about this clean energy and that things. That is absolutely the future, which is why we keep a strong electrical program. You're going to see a lot more electrical vehicles, which I haven't jumped on board yet. I just know I'm going to my battery's going to run low and I'm going to be someplace because that's what I do with my laptops and everything else. So, how do I make sure that thing stays charged up? So, you're going to see a lot more about these electric vehicles, electric vehicle stations, and we are working feverishly to be smack dab in the middle of that. It's important that we're in the middle of a lot of the change that's coming down. So with the Biden administration, all the federal funds that you see that are coming down for all these huge initiatives that were about building America back better, 40% of that funding all has an equity lens on it. Everything, if it's coming out of Department of Transportation, Department of Energy, the Interior, it doesn't matter where it's coming out of, Department of Defense, 40% of the funding that's coming out has to have an equity lens. So we are going to take advantage of that opportunity to, again, reintroduce the Urban League and its value proposition to communities so that they understand that we are that Justice 40 initiative, right? We are the one that will make sure there's equity lens. And when we say equity lens, my thought process is I'd like to have not just the jobs, but we're also talking about how do we get the contracting opportunities, right? How do we participate in that scenario? So that's going to be an important part that you're going to hear a lot more about. I can't see that far, so I'm going to turn around if y'all don't mind. So we had jobs. We had a little over 300 workers with an average wage of $35,000 a year. And I'm excited about that, but we're again reintroducing the Urban League about where we want to go. $35,000 is tough a year, right? The intent is not for folks to have jobs, and we say this at the Urban League now when people come in. We hope you're coming for a career, but more importantly than you coming for a career, what I'm hoping is that you're thinking about how can you change the trajectory of your future, your family's future, and ultimately, right, your community's future. That's really where the opportunity is that we have to be able to put people in more than livable wage jobs, right? I want folks to go on vacation, right? I want folks to have a choice of where they want to live. I want folks to be able to do some of the things that $35,000 a year won't do. So we've got to figure out how do we raise that minimum wage, how do we raise that and really put it in a situation where people can really thrive. That is the intent, is to thrive, not just survive, but how do we have folks thrive? Can you go to the next slide for me? So, in terms of the jobs we had, like I said, we had 289 folks that we served in the last 9 months. Actually, this is 9 months number. 114 of them were women. We focused quite a bit on women this year. With 98% program participants completed work-based learning. And so that is something that you see a lot of funding that's dwindling for us, where people have work-based learning so they can kind of get on-the-job experience and decide whether, and I tell people, you should date your employer too, right? It might not be a culture that you want to be in, so this is your opportunity to kind of see who they are as well. So they're doing some of that dating as well. Go to the next one. This is something I'm really, really excited about. As many of you all know, we have something called the Young Professionals. We call them the YPs. And this is a group of individuals that are from the ages of 21 to 40. This is an extraordinary, important auxiliary that a lot of folks don't realize that we have, and maybe that we don't celebrate the way that we're going to as we move forward. Korn Ferry, which is an international brand, most Fortune 500, I'll even say Fortune 100 companies are engaged with Korn Ferry. Korn Ferry is an executive search firm, and we are leveraging them, and they have been gracious enough to provide us with 30 scholarships to their Leadership Institute. Why is that important? Because we are now introducing 30 early career young professionals to an international, a global brand. And they are deciding, and they are telling us what that leadership training needs to look like. So we're not doing a leadership training program with our own curriculum. right? We're doing it with executive search firms that are saying, we're in the marketplace, and this is what we're seeing that leaders need to have. And so I'm really honored that they've chosen the Urban League of Central Carolinas to launch this. So there's going to be more to come. We're going to celebrate these 30 young career folks and give them the support that they need to participate. It's called the Leadership University for Humanity, which I think was interesting for a leadership institute. So we're excited about the 9-month program that we're going to be launching, and we think that this is a differentiator. You see a lot of different executive search programs or executive leadership programs, but it's interesting that this one leads with humanity. I'm not sure if y'all have had the pleasure of hearing from John Martin from YBLA, but when I talk with him about his program, he always talks about, his responsibility is to create just the leaders and put the people with the right mind in place, right? And then he's just creating leaders that are going to be in place, that have perspective, that have a view of some of the things that may not necessarily be just discussed. So Corn Ferry is helping us do that with our young leaders. Can you go to the next slide? Thank you. So from an education standpoint, one of our pillars, again, education. We don't think that it's our place to really keep duplicating effort. I hate starting programs that already exist, right? If there's a program that already exists, whether it be pre-K or something else, I think it's the Urban League's responsibility to come alongside and say, how can we support you, as opposed to creating some stuff. We've got some great programs out there that just need more support instead of starting our own program. So I waited till our illustrious brand new superintendent got in place, and I went to her and I said, Crystal, we want to launch an initiative, but I will not get ahead of you. I would like to walk alongside you. I'd like to follow your lead because I want to support her. And I'm just so proud to have her as our superintendent. I wanted to support her. And I asked her permission, if it'd be okay, if the Urban League focused on learning loss. Because I hadn't heard a lot of folks talking about how do you support this learning loss. So found out about a program that's in the state of Virginia. It turns out it's here in North Carolina too when I was looking at it. But you'll see where it was Stanford University did a study from the National Student Support Accelerator, which was an organization that was stood up initially in Brown University, then got transferred to Stanford University to figure out how in the world are we going to address this learning loss. We have this huge gap of babies that are returning back to school, and for all intents and purposes, have lost 2 years. And basically what their study concluded was that there's only one way that we could possibly make up for this learning loss, and that is high intensive tutoring. Well, there's not enough hours in the day, and there's not enough people right inside of a school to do that. So this now has really truly become a community effort. So what we'd like to do with the Urban League is in education, we're going to focus on creating what I call, it's kind of the Uber of tutors. It's trying to figure out how can we get college students, pay them, right, and get them out to the schools to help during the day with tutoring. So students that are, need to maybe just brought up in certain areas, the teachers that we just don't have enough time. And parents, when they get home, it's just, they're exhausted, and we're asking them to do more and more and more. So in order to make up for that, we want to see how we might be able to deploy tutors to the school and get them moving very quickly into that scenario. I'm excited to say that, sort of we've gotten the nod from Crystal to be able to do that, and I'm excited about that. So we're excited about that. So that's where we're going to be serving in terms of education. So the next slide for me. So with health, as you all know, and I'll be honest with you, I was a little naive to this. There's a lot of organizations that have health as a pillar. They're doing health fairs and things of that nature. We want to come along, we'll support, but we're going to move out of that space. We think that we have enough organizations that are doing a lot of great work in that space. So one of the things is we have a long-standing relationship with the CDC. So we have the direct relationship now with the CDC, and actually April Turner leads this effort for us, where we are still doing informational talks about COVID. So I don't know if y'all know, but COVID's back on the rise again, right? So, it's not over, and so we know that it affected brown people disproportionately. So we are going to be back out in the streets saying it's not safe to go outside just yet, right? I mean, we still have to figure out a way that we're protecting our folks. So, but one of the things that our illustrious Congresswoman Alma Adams focuses on, she sponsored something called the Momnibus. And the Momnibus is directly related to the Black maternal mortality rate, which I didn't have a clue. I didn't have a clue that the numbers of African American women that are dying while pregnant and or during childbirth or right thereafter. It's staggering. I really didn't know. So because of that, we feel like, that is something that, just the Urban League is positioned differently to focus on and really talk a little bit about. So we're going to do that. We're going to come behind her, support her efforts. I know that they had a program yesterday around that. A lot of people came out online in terms of just discuss and figure out how do we address this. And of course, my question is like, how did it get this bad? Right before anybody said we probably should address this. So we're going to be figuring out ways that we can support the healthcare system. And we've applied for some federal grants and some national level grants to figure out how do we bring resources to address this issue and support African American women during pregnancies. So the next one. And housing. So as you all know, there's a great initiative, an amazing collaborative conversation that's happened around with the United Way, who is doing it's called Home for All, I believe. And so again, there's been so much work, a lot of work that's done in the housing space. I don't really feel again that it's our place to necessarily duplicate. Sometimes we need to come alongside and figure out how do we help, and then just make sure, right, that we have the right lens on it. And so they've been great partners, the United Way and other entities that are involved in that initiative around housing. However, we have a housing pillar. So what can we do that's effective in our community? So our focus is going to be on, well, what if we keep you in your house instead of having to get you a house? So, we're really working with partners to figure out, if someone's behind on their rent or they're experiencing an issue with their landlord, what are the appropriate, legal recourses or options that they have from a financing perspective? What do we need to do? And so that's some of the things that we've been doing is some of our students might have, I'm behind 1 or 2 months. And that's very real. That's happening with a lot of our students. And so we try to stand in the gap, stop what's happening and figure out a way to keep them in. But as we explore this issue and move into it further, we really think our place is just to figure out how do we keep families together, how do we keep them in their home, right, so that we can help mitigate and deal with some of the homelessness. And the National Urban League has had this initiative, I didn't realize, for years, where they work to figure out how do we keep people in their home. And so we're going to try and come alongside a lot of the housing initiatives in that space and figuring out how do we keep folks, maybe it's renovating their home, maybe it's paying their rent, or better yet, maybe it's getting them, again, home ownership. Because as we know, we've got folks that have been in their home for 20 years that don't necessarily own it. So how do we change that trajectory? So that's where we're going to be spending our time and our energy around restoration. You can go to the next one for me. And advocacy. So this is really where I think our first pillar is and where we launched who we are from that perspective. So, we've traditionally done the state of Black North Carolina or the state of Black Charlotte. And y'all, I met this young African-American female pollster, and there's not very many African-American pollsters, let alone African-American female. She's the only one I've ever met. So she does something called the Pulse of Black America. And so we're going to be bringing her here to help us kind of think about, what are folks thinking about, right? Things have changed a little bit. I will tell you all, perfect example is workforce development. When I say it's changed a little bit, things are different. Folks are not necessarily coming to the Urban League and saying, I'm hoping to be in this career for 20 years or the whole. That gig economy has changed everything. So it's a different mindset. So I'm so excited about the work that she's doing and that she's going to do to kind of help us understand this a little bit better. Digital equity, our partners, with Charter, Spectrum, AT&T, we're trying to figure out how do we still bridge that digital equity gap, that digital learning gap. So we're focused on digital equity. And again, we see that as a policy advocacy and justice issue. The reentry workforce, we want to get back to doing expungement clinics. I had no idea of the impact. I saw a picture of an expungement clinic we must have done, about 5 years ago or so. I'm not sure when we did it, but the building was, I saw the line going all the way down 5th Street. And I thought, good night, right? So this is really an opportunity. And so I don't know if y'all know, but I found out the NAACP Legal Defense Fund has 35 scholars that they work with each year that come to Charlotte for their retreat. I found out they were here. I was like, hey, why'd y'all come over to the Urban League? Why y'all way out there in Valentine? I was like, come on over to the Urban League. And so I sat down and talked with this unbelievable group of 30 scholars, young budding attorneys. And so they're going to help us annually with now doing an expungement clinic, and we're going to try and figure out some other opportunities for us. violence prevention alternatives. So this has obviously risen to the top, and more each day I begin to realize this. And I'll be honest with y'all, I was a little afraid of this initiative. I didn't think that we were ready yet as the Urban League, but we went ahead and we put our names forward and responded to the Cure Violence scenario. And you know, we were awarded the Cure Violence about a month ago from the city of Charlotte, and super honored to be in a position to do this work, where we are going to be trying to figure out, you know, how do we get ahead of the violence, right? How do we make sure there's no retaliation for violence? So there's a lot of beliefs. There's a lot of beliefs around who and how this should happen. I'm a big believer in the saying that, I've forgotten the name of the mayor in Detroit that said this, but he said that nothing stops a bullet like a good job. So, you know, I've never forgotten that statement. And so that makes me think about how do we spend our energy and our time making sure that we don't get to a place of violence. And so that's really super important. So we're excited about that. Of course, the Reclaim Your Vote, we're ready. I know April's chomping at the bit, and I am too, to get ready with that. Mark Mario keeps telling me stand down, but I'm like, Mark, I think you gotta get going. This voting thing is serious. So can I tell y'all this dream I have? My dream is that we have the highest rate of voting college students in the United States. We have, I think we're outnumbered now by Alabama, but viable, strong, historically black colleges and universities, we still have the 10 of the strongest, okay, to include one of the largest. I don't think we realize that just with the HBCUs alone, we could change the trajectory of policy just with their votes. So just imagine if we could get them really, really hot and active on their campuses. So that's just a dream that I have. So y'all pray for me and work with me on that. But that's something we want to do around the state. And I say around the state because I tell folks we're the Urban League of Central Carolinas, which is not the Urban League of Charlotte. So this is where our headquarters is, but we have a responsibility to every part of, I believe, the state, except for Winston-Salem, where I have a really wonderful colleague who is holding down the Winston-Salem area. So that being said, also community organizing training. So we have just recently applied for grants with Queen's University to move their community organization and community organizing program and certification program to the Urban League. So y'all are the first to hear about that. So we've submitted that grant one way or the other. We're going to figure out a way to bring it, and so that we can be intentional about building leaders. We have a lot of strong talent in our community that we just maybe haven't given some of the right tools, right? I'm going to go through the training. I don't necessarily know exactly how everything works in this town or any other town, but I think I'm excited about making sure that we're building a lot more of those folks. You can advance that for me. So with entrepreneurship, we haven't built out this pillar, and it's not typically a standard pillar, but it is something that is significant to the Urban League, right? We believe that entrepreneurship really is the path to generational wealth. Let me say this about that we have, again, the National Institute. Do y'all remember Andrea Harris? Yeah, okay. Andrea Harris was my mentor, and Andrea Harris is who put me on the path to this life of building access. And, she stood up the North Carolina Institute of Minority Economic Development, which is now the National Institute. And so we have a lot of strong partners, again, in this state that I don't know that we necessarily need to hold down that space. How do we come alongside them, support what they're doing, invest in them, and bring their services to the community? So we're working on that. Obviously, the Carolina Small Business Development Fund that is here. And I don't know if y'all realize it, but the Urban League is also a CDFI. We're also a community development funding institution nationally. That is significant. Again, I didn't know that, but here's the wonderful part about it. The president of the CDFI lives here in Charlotte. So when I found that out, I was like, hey, we got office space down here. Why don't you come on down here in which time? You don't have to work from the house, come down here and work with us, right? So we can begin to figure out how do we get those funds out to minority businesses. So we're excited about that. Something that you're going to hear about, if you haven't heard about it already, that sort of falls under the housing, but yet more so the entrepreneurship, is we have been honored to lead an effort that will, I think, illustrate where the new Urban League of the Carolinas is going to go. Again, we're trying to stand in the gap where places that other entities can't necessarily stand in the gap. So you all remember all this uproar that's happened, I mean, it's not new to us, but the uproar that's happened around appraisal bias, where you've seen folks that their homes are being valued if you're African American versus if you're majority. Well, Wells Fargo, well, let me back up and say JP Morgan Chase, with Fannie Mae and Fannie Mac about 6 years ago, launched something called the Appraisal Diversity Initiative. That initiative launched and put a number of African Americans through the appraisal certification process to learn to become appraisers. What they discovered was 97.9% of all appraisers are white males over the age of 50. So we have this workforce, right? So so they're thinking like, we need to diversify that workforce, and that's where we will start. So so they put them through this initiative. I think something like a little over 400 people. At the end of that, 400 people that got through the training, only about 64 of them are now appraisers. I was like, what happened? So they realized what's happening is in order to become an appraiser, you have to have 1,500 hours to walk alongside a mentor and a trainer. So guess what? Right, that means you gotta find a trainer. There are people that are waiting and have been waiting over 2, 3, 4, 5 years to find somebody that will take them on as a trainer. Exactly. So we were like, oh, well, that's where we need to start. We need to figure out how do we incentivize and how do we create and how do we bridge the folks that have been through the process and want a trainer. So I'm really super proud in Raleigh. Obviously, we're expanding out and kind of reinvigorating ourselves in the Raleigh area, is that we have a group called the North Carolina Black Real Estate Appraisers Coalition. And we haven't found anything else like that across the United States. And so they are walking alongside us, and we are going to be launching next month the initiative where we will be supporting appraisers that are current appraisers. But out of 4,000, hear me, 4,000 appraisers in the state of North Carolina, less than 100 are African American. And of those, 8 are women. So when I say this industry, and that's just what we know, right? There could be more out there, right? Maybe this initiative will sort of shake the leaves, but we know there's clearly room for us to diversify that industry and do something a little bit differently. So I'm really super proud that that's something that that we're just uniquely positioned, to be able to do. So you'll hear more about that. Again, we think of it from an entrepreneurial perspective because that's something that anybody can make money doing that, right? You got to get training, you got to get 1,500 hours, so we've got to figure out how do we incentivize those that are trainers to bring trainees along and give them the opportunity to finish their coursework so that they can get certified. So that is the new Urban League. And I will tell you, next slide, April. I will tell you, I just came back from the national conference last week. Darlene was there with on our student side, and I left there not discouraged, but certainly trying to figure out some things. Y'all, we are in the process of seeing 60 years worth of progress turn backwards. 60 years, and I'm really going to be ringing that bell. So I'm looking at my staff. When you go out, I need y'all to say 60 years. We have essentially lost our stopgap measure. If nothing else, usually if something got to the Supreme Court, it didn't get through. We have now lost that. We have lost that stuff. So if you notice, everything's being challenged. So because of that, we are in a different stage of having to be vigilant and having to be sober. And we are now going to have to start very different conversations that we haven't had in the past. Or we thought we didn't have to have in the past. But it is very, very real that we are literally in the process of the undoing of 60 years of progress. And so you're going to be hearing more from us about that and what we can do about it, right? What do we have to do? Which is why I'm so focused on those HBCU students. They really have the ability to change the trajectory of policy. So with that, I'll open up the door and what if I can answer your questions? Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Our first question comes from Jackie.
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. So good to have you here. You spoke a little bit about appraisers, but that's also related to pest inspectors also, which are required most of the time when you purchase a home.
Let's talk about that, because we might as well build that on there too. So, yeah, I was like, we might as well build that right. Is that, are you seeing that there's a difficult time finding? Because I know they have to have certain type of certifications as well. Is that something that,
Very similar,
wow,
yes.
okay,
I'd be happy to talk with you about it.
excellent.
My questions, can I ask 2 quick questions? There'll be yes or no answers. Ask one, okay. Okay, do you still have a space on the east side?
We do. 1800 Milton?
3118A.
I was close, 311A, Milton.
Okay. Where's come back around?
What's on me? Good morning. Thank you for the presentation. So my question is, again, apparently thank you for saving the world. So many initiatives. But with that, again, being Black in America, even when you engage, prepare so many people to engage our economy with that preparation, and again, just the education that you presented, I wanted to know if you have any initiatives that focuses on building social capital. That, you know, again, being Black in America, there are reluctancies and insecurities that we face when you don't have that person that you can kind of call to for just to be, you know, again, to kind of show you the ropes and show you culture. Are there programs or is there an intention to enhance social capital, especially like with the young professionals you have that you're growing?
Right, thank you for that. So, you know, they do a great job of networking.
Absolutely.
They call it networking, I call it partying, but you know what I'm saying, they do a great job of that. But I think, thank you for asking the question. In all honesty, I think I need to give more thought to that and love to talk to you about it. One of the things that we've changed at the Urban League also is, y'all, this building is open. And I tell folks in my staff, like, all these, I mean, when I say it's open, we are embracing and we are inviting and we are encouraging groups to use the building. It's 19,000 square feet, right? We have offices that we're supposed to renovate, turn over, but Black Social Capital Initiative meets in that building. And so we are honored to have them, and they are grooming the next generation of African American not-for-profit leaders. But in the sense of the social capital that you're referring to, that is definitely something that, you know, thank you. We'll just add to the list because, you know, there's not a lot on the list. So we'll just add that to the list. But we'd love to talk with you more about that.
Is there food?
Blanche.
Thank you. I'm glad you left that last slide up. How can we partner? Dr. Blanche Ben. There's a lot of groups out here that's doing a lot of things that you had mentioned, but I heard you mention other organizations that you have tagged on to. With the Spongeman Clinic, you have Mecklenburg Council on Elders. If you don't know anything about them, they do that a lot. So I would like for you to connect with them. Also with Action North Carolina, we focus on housing and advocating things of that nature. I'd like for you to reach out to them. Also with housing, when Lake Arbor was having all those issues and stuff, I was one of the initiative person that got on top of that because of what was going on. And until we hit those landlords, things of that nature, then we're having a problem. So you need to reach out to some of us grassroots that's really doing some of this work too and not getting paid for it. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. And when I say the Urban League is open, I'm looking for guidance. I'm looking for clarity because we don't know everything, and I know I certainly don't. And so I want to know who they are. So I'd like to get all those groups' names, and if we could have them and meet with them to figure out how we can support them.
Hello. I am one of those people with several of those groups, so you will be hearing from me a lot sooner than later. But I had wanted to ask you, I'm more so thinking about the workforce with the youth. You mentioned you had the 21 to 40. I'm curious, especially after like seeing all those programs listed, are you all engaging or doing any initiatives trying to capture that 14, 16, like that high school, like they're old enough to work, but they're still in school? And I'm saying that to say, I'm a proud HBCU graduate, but if I had not gone to school, I wish I would have known there were other options where I wouldn't be in student loan debt. And I think a lot of those things, a lot of those jobs that you listed are amazing opportunities, But these 14, 16, 17, 18-year-olds are just getting taught college. How do they get those initiatives in their faces as well? And on the HBCU tip, North Carolina Black Alliance, we are engaging around, we got some students on campus, almost every campus at HBCU, North Carolina HBCUs. So I will connect with you to help you see your journey through.
I appreciate
But
that.
that you question is my thing.
Absolutely. So what you described is what we call as the opportunity youth, right? And so that's sort of that 13 to 20-year-old age, group right there. And so, let me just say that is definitely on our radar. I think one of the opportunities that we have, and if y'all can help me with this piece, I'd like to have the opportunity to move the Urban League into community. I love our building. I'm so proud of our building, and I love being downtown as a headquarters, but I want the opportunity for us to have these programs right up the street. Does that make sense? That would be the opportunity for us to have that. So I think that that's what we need to do so that it is more visible and accessible. And so let's talk more about that as well. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Shemaya Haynes, and I have been a champion for what's called the community schools model. And we're currently exploring in 2 CMS schools. My lead partner in that is Communities in Schools, the movement. And so I'm wondering if there's a possibility for us to connect about how the Urban League can really sort of help us in that execution. I'll tell you more about the community schools model.
I love it.
Also, in terms of leadership development and community development, I'd love to see organizations like the Urban League move to an asset-based approach. And I can tell you more about that, but I just wanted to open your eyes and uplift those 2 things.
I look forward to talking with you more about that. Thank you.
Okay, we have Juanita.
Good morning, Ms. Juanita.
Good morning, how are you?
Good, thank you.
What an awesome presentation.
Thank you.
I wanted you to elaborate a little bit more on that justice advocate section, because I too own a nonprofit. It's Crime Victims Coalition here in Charlotte. We have a lot of murders in Charlotte, and so they reach out to me and my organization to help with insurance, and we've been able to do that. So when you have your meeting, I like to be included when you meet with these other nonprofits. Can you elaborate on that and digital equity?
Sure. So the next step, I believe, for the Urban League here in Charlotte is, y'all, again, I love our building, but really what I'd love for you to see on that building, and certainly we have a space designated in that building, is what we'd like to build out as a center of economic and social justice. Because we think that, that is where we can have thought leaders and people that can come together around policy. We've got to start getting back to the conversation about policy and advocacy and how that impacts our day-to-day lives. So a lot of that feeds into, some of the alternatives to violence and some of the things that's happening around that. So we're going to be working, so I do want to talk with you a little bit more about, the alternatives to violence piece. The digital literacy piece is, I tell people there's one thing to have a laptop, there's one thing to have, social media, but how are you really using it? So I think that digital literacy piece, a lot of folks don't realize probably what they don't know. They don't know about the digital footprint, the impact of that. I tell young folks all the time, I said, listen, HR people, you gotta be mindful about what you're putting out there.
Yes.
I said, HR is now looking at your name, they're looking you up on Instagram, but this is what's interesting, on Facebook, and they now have this AI that looks at your face and predicts and says, this person's likely going to be check fraud, and it's the craziest thing. Yes. And then what they do is they go look at your friends. They look at who you're associating with. So, this digital literacy piece to me has now gone beyond, this is where you hit the escape key. Right? This is now, I need you to be aware, right, of really how this can impact. I tell my daughter, I was like, one post can jack your life up.
Yes.
So, that is something that we want to talk about. But not only that, we're hoping that You know, we really want to figure out a way to engage our seasoned citizens. This is just a wealth of knowledge. Y'all have already given me a list of like 9 different action items. I hope somebody's writing this down. 9 different action items and things I need to do. So I got that just in this hour. So I'm so grateful for that. And so how do we keep that going? How do we keep that going in terms of information? But more importantly, we'd love to bring that digital literacy piece to some of our seasoned community as well, because we want them to be aware of the impact as well.
Just this information, digital piece that we have here, this is videotaped. You can always go back to our website.
Perfect.
And review this.
Yeah.
Everything that's being said this morning.
That's perfect. That is perfect. Thank you for that. Someone else had a question. Yes, ma'am.
Well, we got Ms. Johnson. Then we have.
They have order.
Yeah, we're just in the order.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I do have a question. We had a young lady here before who had a vocational school, and she said that one of her challenges was her students not being able to read well enough to comprehend the information that they had and to pass those exams. They didn't know enough reading and math. Are you encountering any of those problems?
So I want to share with you what problems we are encountering, and I honor that. I'm not sure if it's the same young lady that we might be talking about, but I know there's a vocational school that's on West Boulevard that I was just so impressed with, just who she is and the work that she was doing. Urban League doesn't need to go in there, right? We just need to figure out, again, how do we support the work she's doing. But I love the fact that she did the pre-test to get them a sense of that. We don't do a pre-test. Maybe we need to start doing a pre-test a little bit differently, because when you think about it, a lot of folks that are coming to us, they have been away from school for 10, 15 years, and even when you were in school, I don't know how great of a student you were. We're taking them through a lot of these things, and then they're essentially having to take some sort of a standardized test at the end of it. And that really began to hit us differently, because people can do all the things that we ask them to do, and they get all the way through, and they can't pass that certification exam. So she was the one, I'm wondering if it's the same way, that made me realize and think about how we're setting people up for success to make them, to send them through that. And so I think that she has a great idea. She has a great, model that maybe we should adopt. And again, to support her in the way that we're doing workforce development. The second thing is I'll reiterate what I was saying earlier, is that, the mindset is just different about going to work. It's just different. And so, workforce development, I tell people who come through my HVAC class, they can come through electrician class and never go on a job if they want to, and tomorrow be on Angie's List, Home Advisor, TaskRabbit, and be in business, right, in an hour. And guess what? And I'm one of the folks that's going to call and be like, it's a little warm in here, something wrong with my HVAC, and that's where I go to find people to come fix stuff. So people, if you ever talk to an Uber or a Lyft driver, I always ask them, so, do you do this full time? No, I don't do it full time, right? One way he was like, well, I'm a notary. He said, I'm a chef, and I drive the Lyft. Folks want to be in control of their time now. And so I said, COVID really shifted things. So, again, how we're engaging folks, I definitely honor the fact that we need to probably do some pre-work that we haven't done traditionally, but we're going to get back to doing that. So thank you for raising that issue. So.
Well, blessings to you. I'm Mick Alexander. I'm president of Well.
Yes.
I'm an emotional intelligence coach and advocate. And my question is, I heard you say folks want to be in control of their time. I'm interested in them being in control of their mind. So I'm wondering, what are your initiatives around mental wellness?
Thank you for that. So, as y'all know, we're trying to boil the ocean. So that is something that comes up. We have not approached it intently. So let me say that we have a staff of 7. That's not an excuse, but we have a staff of 7. Y'all, we need a staff of 77, right? To get really to the heart of the initiatives, which is why I love this forum and I love the opportunity to be here. Because again, there's partners out there doing good work. How do we just help them do even better work? How do we come alongside them? How do we put some infrastructure in place to support them so that they can do more work? So thank you for raising the mental health issue. Again, another significant challenge in our community, particularly with young Black males. that we're finding. We are, some things are beginning to come back to the league. I will share this, and this is an honor that we're being invited to. And that says a lot about what I believe the work that the team is doing. People are calling us and saying, hey, there's this Black Fathers Initiative, we want to place it there. And, I'll say this, and I've said it publicly, I'll say it all the time. I'm a big believer that, we've had a lot of initiatives in town, I call it the Charlotte way, that we, do things, we go out and get a couple, famous people, and they raise a lot of money, and we have an initiative. I said, I'm just trying to figure out, for a while, I just want Black folks to fix Black folks' problems. Yeah. So could we just, kind of get, the funding and the infrastructure to really meet that need, which is why I wanted to start thinking about the Urban League as a long-standing institution. I tell people, upward mobility, we've been doing upward mobility for 100 years, right? I mean, so that upward mobility, the social mobility, the whole nine, but organizations like ours have not been necessarily supported to that level. However, I will tell you, Las Vegas, Springfield, Illinois, their urban leagues are $44 million institutions. St. Louis is $31 million. They are building a $61 million complex. There is no reason, I don't see a single reason why we can't. So now I'm competitive, so now, we gotta be 50. So I'm like, we have to be a $50 million institution, right? And be having that kind of impact in the neighborhood, there's no reason why we shouldn't do that. But we have to make sure that we are positioning ourselves to be an organization of choice. And so that's what we're really, really working on. How do we become an organization of choice to do that? So we can take on some of these other initiatives and, or better yet, Doctor, I'm sorry, I think about the organizations that you mentioned, right? How do we embrace them, bring them in, and give them more resources to do what they need to get done? Mm-hmm.
Gotta be entertained.
There you go. There you go. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Hamilton. Is or will the Urban League be coordinating with the new Mecklenburg County Office of Violence Prevention, and they have a strategic plan called The Way Forward?
We meet with them weekly now. Yes. So again, we're trying to figure out where's the work that's kind of already been done and how do we piggyback on that.
Carlene.
Hey, Ms. Ivy.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
I don't want to ask this question. When is an interim title going to be removed? But that's not my question.
Oh, does it say that?
Yeah.
Oh, I apologize. So, yes.
No, I really do want to know that because it needs to be removed.
It does. 2 months ago, I accepted the full-time job, and I didn't know it still said interim. I'm sorry. Yes, okay. I do need to take that down.
Oh, great.
You can take that down.
Great.
Thank you.
But that's not my question. Based upon, and something that I heard that was very disturbing was that your heart can be in the right place, but it's not effective. And that was like LeBron's James School. Mm-hmm. Children have not passed the math test in 3 years. Mm-hmm. None of them. Mm-hmm. And I looked at all the programs that you have. Mm-hmm. You have 7 people. Mm-hmm. That is not enough.
Exactly.
You asked, how can we partner? And so, I feel like you could have every program that you name is needed, but what can we do as far as advocacy to help you to get more employees? Because when I walked in here and after you finished, I was tired. So I don't understand how 7 employees can undertake all the initiatives that you talked about earlier.
Yes, ma'am. So it's a lot of 2 a.m., 3 a.m. Bedtimes right now, but thank you for that. And I'll be honest with you, at the end of the day, it's about resources, and I'm not apologetic about that. And I'll be honest with you, one of the things someone asked me, what did I want my legacy to be? And I said, I'd like for my legacy to be that I have left the Urban League in a state to where it is self-sustaining. That if we don't get another corporate dime, that if we don't do another gala, we are fine. So that's the reason I have to think in terms of we should be a $50 million institution. So the intent is I'm trying to run as hard as I can. I'm trying to run as hard as I can to raise money, raise awareness, and and bring in the resources. The Urban League has the ability to literally bring in cash. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of federal funding that doesn't come to our city because it's not nobody's positioned to get it. But we are positioned. So if we can be intentional about bringing that funding in and raising staff, we can take on all these initiatives, but more importantly, we can figure out how do we take care of some of the organizations that are already doing the work. We don't necessarily have to do the work. We can help raise the money to fund the organizations that are doing the work. And I think that that's kind of a mindset shift, that we don't have to have Urban League's logo on it. Why can't we sponsor organizations to do the work? So thank you for that. And so I know you have the ear of a few folks, so we'll be talking about that. You need to call them and say, get that girl, Jay. So we can tell them that we need the resources, but you're right. We need 77 people. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for your presentation.
Oh, no, thank you.
I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying every bit of it. Now, I have a former student who's working in Sacramento now, but off the subject of education and what you do, let's find out who that president is who was in that meeting with you. You said that you were in a meeting in Washington?
Yes.
Who was the president in the room with you?
Oh, President Joe Biden. Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that. I quietly call him Uncle Joe. I figured since he sat down and looked and had coffee with us, that makes him Uncle Joe. You know what I'm saying? Uncle Joe was in the building with us, so that was quite an honor. We were really excited about that. So.
Good morning. My name is Vivian. Yes, ma'am. My question is, are you connected to the previous president of the early 1900s? The 90s?
I wish.
Like Nadine?
That's who I would.
Nadine was an awesome president.
I would love to, folks are like, you need to do it the way they did it. I hear that all the time. And so I would be honored to be connected. I'd love to have her come to our gala, which is this Friday, because we're celebrating 45 years. And she stood up the institution. And so, can you make that happen? I would love to, because I really do honor legacy, and I honor, I tell people, man, my hat's off for folks that have navigated this and navigated COVID. I just couldn't imagine what it was like to be a not-for-profit leader during COVID. That's just, but Nadine left a legacy. I'm still finding pictures. Y'all, we got the albums, the sticky ones that you open up, it's the sticky thing. We literally have like volumes though. Miss Loretta found them. And Miss Hattie, who was it that? You didn't find whatever. But we found pictures from a long time ago, so we're celebrating that. But I would be honored to be connected with her. Honored. Yes, Miss Sharon, how are you? Aren't y'all proud of her too? I'm just excited about the work that she's doing.
Hi, Sherry. Just I'm thinking on opportunity. It's good to see you.
You too.
And thank you for your presentation. And listening to you, it's so reminiscent of where I was just a few years ago. And so my question for you, as a Black woman leader coming in and reinvigorating an organization, how, as a community, can we be supportive of the work that you're doing right now?
Yeah.
So that we could be doing that to lift you up.
Thank you for that, Sherry. Two things. Help us be in the room when we're not in the room. Does that make sense? Like, there's conversations and things going on, and as I learned about these organizations like I just did today, I can say, well, hey, XYZ is doing blank, right? I want you to think of us again as an institution, someone who can be, part of the infrastructure of building community. And so helping us be in the room when we're not in the room is very helpful. The other thing is, and I want to answer that question saying, for example, just like with what you do. I mean, the work Sherry's doing is phenomenal, but the team she's put together, that woman has put together a data team like none other. I believe in sharing resources, right? I believe in, how do we leverage what each one another have to say, hey, I can't give you cash, but I can give you, right, this intellect, or I can give you this, or I can give you this, right? So those things are important. Cash is always king, but I'm finding that when I'm in a room with individuals such as that are in this room today, they carry our water, and then all of a sudden I get a call, and they're saying, hey, XYZ said you could possibly do this. Can we get a conversation going? And that has been helpful because it's beginning to lead us to be a strong organization that is learning where we can add value, right? We've lost our way. I'll be honest with you. The Urban League kind of lost its way for a little while, right? But we're back And so in order to do that, we have to get into places, we have to make sure that, first of all, we prove ourselves. The team knows I'm really big on, please do what you say you're gonna do, when you're gonna say you're gonna do it, how you said you was gonna do it, right? I mean, that is absolute paramount that we have to do to earn trust again and to build the legacy and the brand back to its real true prominence. They help us be in the room when we're not in the room. That's one of the biggest things out of the beautiful thing. So thank you for asking that, Sharon.
Jay.
Hi, Vivian kind of asked my question. I'm so happy to have you in this position.
Thank you.
It kind of goes back to Nadine Field, and before then, even Christina Bradley.
See, I hadn't heard that name.
The whole Hargrave's daughter, years and years ago, but there are folk who know her.
Yes.
Knew her. But you were talking about the space there. I was at the Urban League about a month ago with Ray Jackson and Hill Charlotte.
Yes.
Wonderful conference on the alternatives to violence. And that was indeed wonderful. My question is, funding that was lost from United Way, how has that affected you?
It's interesting to me, and again, I want to be candid, but I also want to be, I don't think folks realize that we didn't necessarily benefit a lot from what I call the George Floyd sorry money. We didn't see there's some organizations that said, right? We didn't receive the Mackenzie Scott money. We didn't receive, we weren't, so the Urban League, we didn't have that. We weren't at the table when the mayor's racial equity initiative was developed, right? So that's what I said, that we're building our way back to building the credibility, rebuilding the brand, rebuilding the reminding the folks of the institution. And so, you losing the United Way funding obviously is to the tune of, I think it was $130,000. I mean, that's significant, right? That's 2 FTEs or one, because I tell people, I'm not paying people pennies anymore to come work for not-for-profits. We are not doing that anymore. I want to pay people well. But yeah, they, that obviously impacts the ability for us to do a lot of things. So we're hoping, to restore that or replace that. What I'd like to see is I'm asking organizations to fund us differently, invest in us differently. Instead of giving me $10,000 for a table at the gala, I'd like to have $100,000 and a 3-year commitment for $100,000 a year. So I'd like to, I'm just trying to, but I'm saying, but this is what you're investing in. But you can't give me $10,000 for a table and then an impact report that reflects that we did this with your $10,000. So changing the mindset around that, the trust-based philanthropy model, and getting folks to understand that in order to really make true impact, you gotta have real investment. And it's not done, at least at our gala now. We can change the gala, maybe make $1 bazillion, but we have to think about investing long-term along the way. Along with that, I wanted to say this before Sherry left. I think about things like, where will League on Opportunity go? Does that make sense? It is absolutely the work that she's doing. I'm so in awe of her. She's amazing. But, where does that go? Will 10 years ago, will we be talking about Leading on Opportunity? Right? And this is some of the things I've seen as a pattern over the past 25 years in Charlotte, right? We did these amazing initiatives, and then they eventually kind of fizzle out, right? It should be intentional that the Urban League either inherits or that we, and the funding with it, that we inherit something like that. Imagine if we had the data scientist engine that she has on our policy side, right? And so that's the reason I love that you're seeing a lot of African-American women in Charlotte now. We're coming together intentionally to talk about, what resource do you have? What resource do you have? But, I want Charlotte to be more intentional about where do these things go to live and really have a long-term opportunity as opposed to an initiative. Does that make sense?
Let me say this, my son went through the Urban League with a lot of different programs, and I was happy about that, and I went to a workshop. So I'm glad that you said that y'all wasn't at the table and how you felt about that. Mm-hmm. And so this is how a lot of these organizations that's in this room feel about that we're not at the table with the good initiatives that we have. And we hear people talk about what they're going to do. Oh, I like but they never invite us to the table. They say it while we're in the presence of us, but we still never get invited. And so hopefully you will invite some of the people in this room to the table, and especially you mentioned seniors. So, and I am a senior. Seasoned senior. So we want to be at the table too, okay? Okay. Thank you.
So, listen, I'm gonna take y'all up on that. Are y'all familiar with the Guild? The Urban League, one of the other influential auxiliaries is the Guild. And so I don't know if y'all know, but you just became the honorary Guild for the Urban League. So, this is the honorary Guild because this is where a lot of the wisdom and a lot of the legacy and a lot of the movement comes from. It's from our Guild. And so, to your point, I will tell you, we will have it, and folks have seen this. When I say the Urban League is open, if I know about the organization, when we're having something, we started something, and I haven't brought it back, called the Green Book. I call it the Green Book Coalition. Where we have, have a Green Book group where we can come to the Urban League and just, kind of support one another, hear about one another, and figure out who can help support one another. So we do need to be more intentional about that. So I'll keep that going.
All right, this next question is typically Ms. Jackson's question weekly, but she's already had about 40. So I'm going to ask on her behalf because I'm sure the room would like to know. Can you tell us just about you personally, where you're from, just something about your upbringing, what led you here, and also in that theme of supporting Black women, have you been in contact with Johnson C. Smith's new president?
So let me answer that one first. I have not, but Dr. Karen Morgan sits on our board of directors from JCSU. And so I intend to get her, again, support her, wrap my arms around her, follow her, and do whatever I can to make sure she's successful. So goodness gracious, born in Illinois, but I was raised in Denver, Colorado. And so I'm loving my life in Denver, Colorado. So I'm a country horse riding little girl, and that's my thing. And so left there and moved to Washington, D.C., and my mother worked on the Hill. She worked for the National Conference of State Legislators, but she spent 20 years doing the conference for the National Black Caucus of the state legislatures. So I didn't realize it, but I was growing up around politics, right? You're just in it, you're just doing what you do. And so I had the pleasure to be around a lot of policy, and I didn't realize at the time. So when I moved to Washington, D.C., my first job, y'all, was Arthur Anderson. That don't date me. But what was interesting is it was on 1777 K Street. And I kept falling into these little places that were, centered on politics. So I was working on K Street. And then I, didn't have the money for college, so I went to the Army. And so I served as a military intelligence in the Army. And then I switched branches, actually. You could do that. Who knew? And so I also served in the Air Force. And so I served as a social action specialist in the Air Force. I was one of the first people to teach don't ask, don't tell. Wow. Yeah, I'm dating myself. So so that was my thing. So left there and went to go work. One of my first jobs was with Citizens Trust Bank, around the corner from Atlanta Life Insurance in Atlanta, Georgia. So again, I tell people, when you work for a bank, a Black bank, you are in minority business development. Whether you wanted to be or not, you are in it. So again, it was just this theme, and then went on to work for the United States Department of Commerce, which was how I got to North Carolina, and had the chance to facilitate grants. And that's where I met Ms. Harris. And if anybody knows Andrea Harris, you ain't facilitating Ms. Harris, right? She facilitating you. So there was a whole lot of yes ma'am going on. Look, I was the one writing the check, but I was like, yes ma'am, 1 more zero, yes ma'am. But she was amazing in terms of how she opened my eyes and to the world of possibilities, and she pushed me. And I will tell you the moment that I think defined me, because nobody goes to school and it's like, ooh, when I grow up, I want to work in minority economic development, right? It's not a thing. So, are y'all familiar with Bob Johnson? I'm sorry, not Bob Johnson. Bob Brown.
Yes. High
Point, North Carolina. So I want to name the building for Mr. Brown. I don't know if many of y'all know that in 1969, in the Richard Nixon administration, Bob Brown was in the room with, at the time, the President of the United States, and he looked over at Mr. Brown and said, "What do you think we should do about all the rioting?" And Mr. Brown said, "That's an economic issue." And hence, all of a sudden, the Office of Minority Business was formed, now called the Minority Business Development Agency, and that birthed the movement of minority economic development. That man is, I was on the phone with him a couple days ago, so Mr. Brown's a dear friend and mentor. He calls me girl. He'll never use my name. He says, girl. Mr. Brown, and so I talked with him, but yeah, so he changed the trajectory of what I thought I was going to do. I went to go see him one day, and I had a contingency of very important people with me that were down from Washington. And we came into the conference room, and we sat in the conference room, and he was running late, like me. And he came in, or Mr. Frankie came in and stuck his head in the room, and he said, y'all, Mr. Brown's going to be with you in just a moment. He's on the phone. I could hear Mr. Brown talking. Mr. Brown was on the phone with the chancellor of NC Central talking about two boys he knows that are good boys that are washing cars but should be in college. This is a man that has sat with world leaders. He was the only person other than Winnie Mandela to actually see Nelson Mandela on Robben's Island, and he was allowed that visit because Nelson wanted to ask him personally to educate his children while he was incarcerated. He escorted Martin Luther King's body back from Memphis. This man was on the phone fighting for two boys that were at a car wash for them to have a job. That was my aha moment. That's what I want to be when I grow up. Like, I don't know what you called it, but I'll never forget that moment in my life when I realized that's what I want to do. I want to be able to pick up the phone from North Carolina Central and have two boys that are washing cars, in college. So that's when I think I started on the trajectory of creating access, and so left and went on to become the CEO of the Carolinas Minority Supplier Development Council. So so that's where most folks remember me from. They're like, "Weren't you the CEO of the council?" I was like, "I was." And then I got a call from our illustrious mayor, Anthony Fox, who told me I need to go sit on the DNC team to make sure they do right. And I said, there's no way I'm leaving my job. I was like, I am the CEO. But Ms. Harris told me I was going to leave my government job too. She said, you're going to leave that government job. You're going to come over with this. I said, yes, ma'am. So they told me I was going to go do this. I was voluntold, so I left there and had to, and y'all, that was the first time I encountered Mr. Ferguson. And he said, you're going to do right. I was like, yes, sir. You know what I'm saying? That you in this role, you're going to make sure that minority businesses get a piece of this DNC. So ever since then, obviously the reverence I have for Mr. Ferguson. So we did exceptionally well, I will say, at the Democratic National Convention. And so we were the first organization set up the way that we were. And so I was honored to be tasked with making sure minority businesses, small businesses, and Charlotte businesses got a piece of DNC. And then after that, I went over to No One Health for a while. I did some things with the Community Foundation. Y'all then took a left and moved to Lafayette, Louisiana. So I'm in love with Louisiana cuisine and Louisiana itself. I was there for about 4 years and then came back here to stand up Dogwood Health Trust Healthy Opportunities Pilot. So working with social determinants of health. And then my plan was to sit on the couch for a little while, and then I wanted to get up and I was like, I'm gonna work for TJ Maxx. I wanted to go work at TJ Maxx for a little while. And then, Rosalind Jacobs called. Don't pick up the phone, and she called me at night, y'all. She was like, you're going to get a call tomorrow. You can do this, girl. I was like, what are we doing? She was like, so I said I'd come over, and that was it.
Robyn, all right. We have a couple of questions that we need to. Young man,
yes,
did you have a question?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Quick question. We ask you to 30 seconds and quick answer.
I get 30 seconds?
Yes.
I'll keep it brief. My name is Lieutenant Commander Franklin Muhammad, retired. I'm Navy veteran. Yes. I'm new to the Charlotte area. Okay. And if you can, how can I set up an employment with you so that I can help you do what you do?
Thank you.
And continue on great things?
Yes, yes, and yes. You sitting next to the team, so yes.
Okay, yes. Anita, this is our last question.
Okay. You talked a little bit about your upcoming gala. Could you speak with more specificity about it?
Absolutely. This Friday, August 4th, at the Marriott Charlotte City Center, the Marriott downtown. Yes. We're celebrating 45 years. So, if anyone's interested in going, and we have some, right now I'm happy to say we are sold out. We have 500 people, but if anybody's interested in being there, I'd like to know that. Because if we have, we're about to find out where we have gaps or holes, and I would be honored to have you there. But yes, so we're going to be awarding Steve Bolin. Are y'all familiar with Steve Bolin? I wasn't. He is the Chief Administrative Officer for Bank of America. He is the number 2. A wonderful man. We're going to be honoring him. He sits on the National Urban League Board, and we're going to be honoring Dina Diorio, as well as Matt Miles, and we're also going to honor the CMPD Bike Division. They do extraordinary work that I don't think a lot of folks realize. So we're excited about that. So.
Okay, let's give her a round of applause. Now we're going to go into our announcements, and we're going to start with the lady back here, and then Tanya has something that she wants to say, and we'll ask for announcements until 10. Now, you can stay after 10 in the parking lot or in the lobby, because we have to get out of here.
Good morning, I'm Belita Fullwood, and I had the proud pleasure of being here a year ago because August 1st is Black Philanthropy Month. So I just want to make sure everybody knows that and remembers that. And one thing to remember, August 28th is an initiative that the philanthropic collective I'm a part of leads called CLT Gives Black. It's a concerted community-wide day of giving to Black-founded, Black-led, Black-benefiting organizations. If you want to know more, check out our website, new-philanthropist.org, or contact me. Thanks.
Hey, Robyn, I just wanted to thank you for giving me an opportunity, that shout out, and our data team. But I want to clarify, we will be around for the next 10 years, and that's like the other initiatives, so you will still see us in some shape and form trying to influence policy, data, and improve economic mobility. So.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Okay.
Thank you. This is already on your website, but the Democratic Women of Mecklenburg County has their Paint the Town Blue Gala fundraiser to raise money for local Democrats seeking office this year. The Doris Cromartie Award honoree is Senator Joyce Waddell, and this is next Thursday, August 10th at Heist Brewery and Barrel Arts. Websites paintthetownblue.dwmc.com, or I have information.
Oh, I talked to Joyce and she wanted everybody to know that she's the honoree. This is not a fundraiser for her. She's just the honoree.
I want to say thank you to Robyn, but I also want to, Robyn, and I think it's great, I know Mr. Brown, that you're thinking about naming the building. I want everybody to consider that there are a lot of people in Charlotte, Charlotteans, you name Mr. Ferguson, that we need to lift up and we need to honor, and buildings should be named after them. So I know he's in High Point, but there are a lot of people in Charlotte. As Blanche, you just said that they don't bring us to the table. Well, we don't forget. Remember, a lot of good people whose names need to be on buildings and rooms.
Okay, thank you all so much for coming. Oh, okay, Charlene.
Today is, excuse me, today is National Night Out, and every community that is happening at, I guess at 4:30, starting at 4:30, please go out and support your communities. It's important that you get engaged, stay involved, and be a part of the change.
Including the most historically significant community in America, McCrory Heights will have National Night Out at First Baptist West in the back upper parking lot. Come check us out. You can get free food, play games. We're going to have a great time.